Rahul, I'm sure you have heard attend. A lot of people are doing that. I mean, of course, not have a lot of people are running basically and running and running and running and making some money and perhaps they lack the purpose, perhaps, and they're not mentally healthy. They're not mentally happy. So, how do you help such people? What's your strategy to help people who are running a race and they're
Yeah,
they're
I
they're
mean,
moving faster?
it,
They're just moving faster as if they're moving on a treadmill, but they're not going anywhere.
definitely a lot of people, especially right now, might be feeling that burn or that exhaustion. And I think that's why burnout has become such a topic of global discussion right now. In fact, the World Health Organization states that, in fact, it is a global emergency. It's the second pandemic following COVID, is the mental health effects of COVID. And even though we are not commuting right now, a lot of us are still in social isolation. Um, you know, ideally, we would be having more time to do what we want. But what we're doing is we're actually filling up that time with more work. We're working longer hours as well as we're sleeping less. And so that is making that treadmill you talked about, that metaphor, run even faster. And so now we're really feeling kind of overwhelmed by the amount of work that we have to do. And to go back to that question about connection to the work, most people don't realize that purposeful work or value-based action, that's actually one of the best ways to mitigate burnout. If you find inherent joy in what you're doing, and that's always been my litmus test for anything I've ever done, whether it's helping HIV positive mothers in Uganda, or if it's helping a Fortune 500 in the US do a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. My litmus test was always, would I do this for free? Is the action itself fulfilling enough? Am I learning enough? Is it really pushing me forward? That the action itself is worthy of doing. And then if that's the case, you're going to feel less burnt out by doing it because you're already drawn to doing it. And so that's really about aligning what is your passion to what you're doing. Now, a lot of us have jobs where we don't like the job itself or we don't like aspects of that job. And so one of the things that I'm always advocating for, are there parts of that responsibility or that job where you can find meaning in? And maybe it doesn't even have to do anything about your title or what your main purpose of that job is, but can you find those little moments of light throughout the day where that's what's going to give you purpose? And because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to contribute. We're trying to find meaning in our everyday actions. And so having purposeful work is certainly a way that can help reduce some of that stress that we're feeling right now when we're feeling overwhelmed.
Great. Other great bit of advice, Rahul. I think the concept of enjoying what you're doing is very important because you're going to spending 80% of your life working. If you're working, let's say 5 days a week, it's about 80% of your life you're working. It's very important to enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise, it's not worth it. So a lot of people in the world do not enjoy what they do, and a lot of times they also do not have option of changing it. What do you tell them?
Yeah, and this actually goes back to the conversation or what Dr. Rana was saying about there doesn't have to be necessarily a disconnect between what's actually happening versus your reaction to what's happening. This idea of acceptance, that regardless of that external stimuli, there's a way for you to still be, for you to be happy with it. Oftentimes, and Shawnee also mentioned about that gap. Oftentimes, the unhappiness or the frustration comes from, there are things that you want and there are things that you have, and that gap between those two is where we find disconnect. And so one of my favorite sayings is the key to happiness is simple. All you have to do is want what you already have. And so if you can find a way to reevaluate your expectations to saying, you know what, I have a job right now when so many people are unemployed. I have a place to sleep right now when I'm seeing people sleep out on the street. I have potable drinking water right now when a lot of people I know have bacteria and disease in their water. Figuring out ways to reconfigure your expectations is a form of practicing gratitude. And that actually is rewiring the neuroplasticity in your brain because we are pre programmed to identify problems. We have that negativity bias. But if we can rewire our brains to focus on the things that we already have, that we enjoy, that's going to allow us to really be happier with those jobs that we already have when we might not like every aspect of it.
Fabulous, fabulous. You're definitely bringing the point home, Rahul. I think Rahul is again emphasizing on the part of being of paying gratitude for what you have, focusing on things that you have, focusing on the little things that we all enjoy, but we take all of these things for granted, and we always looking for things which we do not have, and there is no limit to that point because we reach one milestone, and the milestone is now next one, and we always tell ourselves we'll be happy when we reach that milestone, and we keep pushing the milestone and we reach the previous one. So the happiness is in enjoying what you have and appreciating what you have and focusing on what you have, focusing on the solutions, not on the problems. Thank you so much, Rahul, for enlightening us